From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. A majority of American voters are pushing for a ceasefire in Gaza, in contrast to the stance of most members of U.S. Congress. A recent poll by Data for Progress highlights a divergence between the mood of the American public and policymakers. According to the poll, 66% of likely voters believe the U.S. should call for a ceasefire and de-escalation of violence in Gaza. Jewish American group If Not Now, which has helped organize demonstrations for a ceasefire, stressed the importance of political leaders allying with their constituents to end the ongoing violence. 18 members of the House of Representatives have sponsored a resolution urging the Biden administration to support a ceasefire. It was introduced by Representatives Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib. Despite these efforts, support for a ceasefire in Congress is holding up, prompting activists and a growing number of Capitol Hill staffers to advocate for change. In an open letter, more than 400 Muslim, Jewish, and allied congressional staffers urged their employers to join calls for an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. More than 260 former employees of Senator Elizabeth Warren's 2020 presidential campaign have also called on the senator to support concrete steps to end the conflict. Senator Bernie Sanders, a leading progressive, has accused Israel of violating international law and called for restraint. He has stressed the need for an end to bombardment and rockets from both sides, the rapid delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza, and the safe return of hostages. The U.S. has rejected calls for a ceasefire in Gaza, citing such a move would help Hamas regroup and prepare for further attacks on Israel. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller says U.S. Special Envoy David Satterfield is working intensively to facilitate the passage of humanitarian aid through the Rafah crossing. He said efforts are also underway to ensure the safe exit of U.S. citizens and other foreign nationals. Last week, the U.S. was criticized for vetoing a UN Security Council resolution calling for a humanitarian pause in the ongoing conflict to deliver aid to Gaza. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. At least 704 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli air raids in Gaza within 24 hours. The total death toll has now risen to more than 5,700, with more than 2,300 children killed. An additional 870 children are reported to be trapped under rubble. In Israel, 1,400 people have been killed due to the ongoing conflict. Gaza's healthcare system is teetering on the brink of collapse, with 40 medical centers suspending operations amid Israel's relentless bombardment. The region's most significant facility, the Indonesian hospital and Beit Hanun hospital, are barely functional, struggling to keep vital departments open. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in a call with Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, slammed the silence of Western nations on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The Israeli army has stormed the West Bank cities of Jericho, Hebron, and Ramallah, among others, and has detained dozens of Palestinians. Palestinian news agency Wafa reports that the Israeli army stormed the city of Jericho from the northern entrance, as well as the Aqaba Jabr refugee camp south of Jericho. The army detained 6 Palestinians living in the camp. Israeli forces have also detained at least 11 Palestinians from Bani Naim town in southern Hebron after searching their homes, local sources report. Palestinian media reports that clashes broke out between Palestinians and Israeli troops during military raids in Nablus, Tulkarem, and Jenin. Palestinians also demonstrated in Ramallah city and Jalazon camp north of Ramallah to condemn the ongoing Israeli aggression in Gaza. The West Bank is seeing a wave of clashes and confrontations between the Israeli army and Palestinians as the Israeli operation intensifies and the humanitarian situation worsens. Israel has decided to delay the ground war in Gaza pending the arrival of additional American forces to the region. Israeli Army radio reports the U.S. has conveyed to Israel its intention to deploy additional American soldiers to the Middle East. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. anticipates an escalation of the war between Israel and Hamas due to the involvement of Iranian proxies. However, Israeli officials emphasize this is not the sole reason for the delay in the ground operation. Israeli radio quoted officials saying other factors are enhancing the operational readiness of forces, seeking a solution to the issue of captives, and the potential for prisoner release deals. Israel has been hinting at the possibility of a ground operation in Gaza for several days. Meanwhile, the Israeli military continues its relentless aerial bombings of Gaza. A former State Department official is decrying the lack of consultation over the latest U.S. weapons transfer to Israel. In a Washington Post piece, Josh Paul reveals that there was a troubling deviation from the usual process, which has led to serious humanitarian implications. Paul is a former director in the State Department's Bureau of Political Military Affairs who announced his resignation from the position last week. He cited his unease with the processes, or lack thereof, surrounding U.S. military aid to Israel. In the Post article, he criticized the policy as not promoting peace and encouraging the expansion of Israeli settlements that are inimical to a future Palestinian state. Paul has more than a decade of experience overseeing arms transfers and security assistance to foreign governments. He lamented the loss of the usual internal debates essential to balancing U.S. relations with legal, political, and moral standards. He also noted that weapons requests for munitions, some of which have nothing to do with the current conflict, have been processed quickly. Paul urged that these requests go through the usual rigorous internal debate, taking into account the potential for civilian harm. His demands, however, were met with a disturbing silence. This rapid mobilization was in stark contrast to Congress's historic stance of preventing arms sales to regimes with dubious human rights records. He recalled the intense discussions during the crisis-related arms sales to Ukraine and stressed that such debates were both possible and necessary. Paul's resignation comes amid growing internal concerns about the U.S. government's ethical approach to international arms deals. The Cleveland chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations is calling for an investigation into the assault on a man of Palestinian descent as a hate crime. On Sunday afternoon, the 20-year-old was allegedly struck by a driver of a dark-colored SUV as he walked home. The vehicle first slowed down and the driver rolled down the window, berating him and shouting out, "Kill all Palestinians and long live Israel," while swerving the car in a threatening manner. The driver then reportedly turned around and punched the man while shouting, "Die," authorities said. Paramedics took the man to a local hospital for treatment of his injuries. Interim Executive Director of CAIR Ohio, Fatin Odeh, has called on the North Ridgeville Police Department and the FBI to treat the incident as a hate crime. He also expressed concern about escalating Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian racism. Former President Barack Obama expressed support for Israel's right to self-defense while warning Israel and the U.S. about the treatment of Palestinians. In a statement on Medium, Obama echoed the Biden administration's stance supporting Israel's actions in Gaza, but he also stressed the importance of how Israel conducts its fight against Hamas. Obama called for avoiding dehumanizing language toward the people of Gaza and the importance of recognizing the suffering of Palestinians. The former president also addressed the root causes of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, particularly the ongoing displacement of Palestinians. Obama noted many Palestinians have lived in the disputed territories for generations and have been forcibly relocated time and again, often with the tacit or explicit support of the Israeli government. He recalled Israel's 2014 war on Gaza during his presidency, when he supported Israel's actions while advocating for a ceasefire. Obama drew a parallel between Israel's current situation and U.S. actions after the September 11, 2001 attacks. He warned Israel not to make the same mistakes Washington made at the time, such as the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, detention practices, and human rights violations. Hamas releases 2 hostages after mediation. Details after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Hamas's military wing, the Al-Qassam Brigade, has released 2 Israeli prisoners on humanitarian grounds. Al-Qassam spokesman Abu Ubaidah made the announcement via a Telegram channel. He said the release was mediated by Qatar and Egypt. Israel previously refused to receive the hostages. Abu Ubaidah said the handover was completed despite Israel committing more than 8 violations of agreed-upon procedures through mediators. The International Court of Justice announced on Monday that it will hold public hearings on Israeli policies related to the occupied Palestinian territory. The hearings have been set to formulate an advisory opinion for the UN on the legal consequences arising from the policies and practices of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. It will begin February 19th at the Peace Palace in The Hague, where the court meets. The request for an advisory opinion was made before the recent escalation in the region. The court's assessment will exclusively address the issue of the Israeli occupation. This request was formalized through a UN General Assembly resolution, which garnered support from 87 countries. Israel's bombing of Gaza has killed a significant figure of the literary world. Esteemed Palestinian writer and poet Heba Abu Nada penned deeply moving stories, novels, and poetry reflecting the struggles and hopes of her people. In a heartfelt tribute on Facebook, the Palestinian Ministry of Culture highlighted Abu Nada's invaluable contributions to literature and culture. Her novel, Oxygen is Not for the Dead, secured first place in Palestine for short stories and the prestigious second place in the Arab world with the Sharjah Award for Arab Creativity. Shortly before her death, she described Gaza in idyllic terms on her Facebook page, envisioning it as a heavenly place free from pain and suffused with eternal love. Tributes are pouring in from fans, fellow writers, and human rights activists. The Israeli army said Monday it had launched a drone attack into Lebanese territories amid rising tensions with Hezbollah. The attack targeted gunmen preparing to launch an anti-tank guided missile from the area of Mount Dove or Sheba Farms into northern Israel. Amid the conflict in Gaza, tension has flared along the border between Israel and Lebanon, with exchanges of fire between Israeli forces and Hezbollah. The border clashes have been the deadliest since Hezbollah and Israel fought a full-scale war in 2006. At the time, the Lebanese group struck major Israeli cities with rockets, causing significant damage. More than 1,000 Lebanese were killed in the war, while much of southern Lebanon, a Hezbollah stronghold, was devastated by Israeli attacks. An Israeli spokesman earlier said the army had eliminated more than 20 Hezbollah cells in southern Lebanon since October 7th. The International Organization for Migration reports that about 19,000 people have fled their homes in southern Lebanon due to the current tension between Hezbollah and Israel. The Indian government continues to confiscate the properties of individuals associated with the freedom movement in Jammu and Kashmir. Kashmir Media Service reports the latest move involves attaching the immovable property, including orchard land, of freedom activist Firoz Ganai. Last January, Indian authorities confiscated the headquarters of the All-Parties Hurriyat Conference in the capital Srinagar. The properties belonging to socio-political organization Jamaat-e-Islami have also been seized. Homes, shops, shopping complexes, and other properties have been demolished by the occupation authorities. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.